If you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months.
Hey guys, welcome back to Be the Standard. I'm Denny Jamazzo, your host. I'm here as always with my best friend and co-host, Mike Burns. Today we have a very special guest. His name's Nick Freitas. He's a husband, a father, a former Green Beret, and currently a delegate for the state of Virginia. First, Nick, let me just say congrats. I know your daughter just got married. Was it last week before?
Yeah, June 13th. So yeah,
Good,
a
man.
couple weeks back. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. She made you shave the beard. So congrats, man. That's pretty cool seeing your family expand like that. So that was really cool to see.
No, thank you. Yeah, it was great. It was funny. Everyone was when they saw the video came out, like, why didn't the husband have to shave? It's like, because he wasn't wearing dress blues.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you got to be in regs, man.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and I don't know if you knew this, but Mike is he's still currently a command sergeant major in the Guard. So,
good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. I got out about 11 years ago or so, but yeah, Mike stayed in. He's been doing a good fight for 27 years.
Yeah, 27 years. I'm currently an operations sergeant major. I did command sergeant major time already, doing some staff time. So.
Oh, so you're the angry sergeant major now.
No way.
Yeah, man. So yeah, some of the reasons, that I wanted to have you on, the biggest reason probably is because I feel that, our values are very much aligned in terms of, how we think and how we feel, politically, just family wise. I'm somewhat of a political junkie. I don't know if you knew this, but my degree is in political science. So I enjoy it. I enjoy talking politics. I enjoy keeping my finger on the pulse and seeing, making sure that things are going right in the country, which obviously currently I wouldn't really agree that they are. But yeah, no. And another thing is, I've seen online, especially this morning, right? You had a post up about, the importance of physical fitness, right? And that dominance over your son. I saw that. I thought that was cool, man.
It's becoming less dominant every day, though. My gosh.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, no, I thought that was pretty cool. But I think a lot of our audience, when they hear, Nick Freitas is a delegate for the state of Virginia, obviously I know, but I think a lot of people are probably what the hell's a delegate do and what's their role. So if you can kind of like lay the groundwork on that, that'd probably be helpful for some people.
Sure. We're like most of your state legislatures in the country kind of model what we have on the federal level. So obviously at the federal level, you have the judiciary, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, which is the president, Senate, and House, and then the Supreme Court. Well, in Virginia, we have the similar thing, right? We have the governor instead of the president, and then we have the Senate. And then instead of a House of Representatives, we have a House of Delegates. And that's kind of a historical holdover here in Virginia. It used to be the House of Burgesses and then later became the House of Delegates. But that's essentially the lower house in our General Assembly or state legislature.
Nice. I think a good follow-up to that is I was looking at some of your content earlier, just kind of preparing for this. And one of the things you said that I liked was, I love the Constitution. I love the Bill of Rights. I love, those documents and kind of what they represent. And, I got the We the People here tattooed on my arm just because I also agree. I think it's probably the greatest document ever written, really. And I think a lot of people don't really understand the protections that are awarded under that document, how it keeps you out of prison, it keeps you safe. And not every country has one, right? Obviously, a lot of countries do have their own version of a constitution. The states have their own versions and things of that nature. But I definitely think for us, that's a great document, and it's taken for granted, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have the privilege of actually representing James Madison's district. So
That's
I've
awesome.
got a lot to live up to, right? It's the guy that used to represent this place is the father of the Constitution, and now they got me. Wow. So it's gone downhill since the late 18th and early 19th centuries. But no, I think properly understanding our U.S. Constitution, especially understanding it within the framework of the Declaration of Independence, because the Declaration of Independence doesn't just list out all the reasons, the 27 different reasons why we left Great Britain. It also articulates a founding principle, and that whole concept of, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That it was a truly revolutionary idea. We kind of take it for granted now. But back then that was almost absurd to the vast majority of people, and certainly governments across the world. So it's important to understand the creation of the Constitution with the backdrop of the Declaration of Independence, because the Articles of Confederation, they didn't feel were getting it done with respect to trying to protect against foreign invasion, trying to advance the interests of the various states. And if you look at what the Constitutional Convention was originally, it was just supposed to go there and kind of shore up problems within the Articles of Confederation. And the Constitution is what came out of it. And obviously there was a lot of debate around that. There was a lot of people that felt like the Constitution was a federal usurpation of power. We focus a lot on the Federalist Papers. We don't learn a lot about the Anti-Federalist Papers. And it's actually important to read both, because the Anti-Federalists came up with some pretty good points. In fact, the reason why we had the Bill of Rights as a separate document that was then used as amendments to the Constitution was in order to create additional safeguards. And one of the most important concepts behind our Constitution, which is not well understood today, is the Constitution does not create rights. The Constitution guarantees pre-existing rights. And that's again, fundamental, because a lot of societies throughout history, they saw rights as something that governments granted to their people. Mm-hmm. Our country saw rights as pre-existing. Most of the founders attributed it to God. Some would attribute it just to natural law, but it was this idea that you as a human being had inherent rights, and that the government's job was to perform certain duties, but that among those duties were to protect those rights. And so when you look at the Bill of Rights, that's not the government telling you what your rights are. That's the people ensuring that the federal government knew that these are restrictions on your power. And that is a very important distinction for people to understand. Yeah. And so I think the Constitution was rather brilliant in what it set up as far as, there's a federalist component in there, understanding that the federal government has certain responsibilities, but then state governments have other responsibilities. It also articulates within the Ninth Amendment this idea that all rights are reserved to the people, and that the jurisdiction within the Constitution for the federal government are limited and enumerated. So if you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, they're telling the federal government, this is your lane, stay in it. Obviously, the federal government has not done that, and that's a whole other conversation with respect to the 16th Amendment, the 17th Amendment, the Federal Reserve. We could go on for hours on that. But on the whole, if you look at the concept of what they were trying to do, how they were trying to set up a constitutional republic that operated off of certain democratic principles, but also served as a major check on what the government could do. I always say the unique thing about the United States is not that, again, we get to elect our representatives. That's good, right? But that's not what's truly unique about it. What's truly unique about it was this whole concept of we're going to preserve individual liberty, property rights, within this underlying culture that believed in personal responsibility and self-determination. And that's what you have to properly understand to truly grasp the importance of the Constitution, that it's not just a document that establishes some government or government or processes, that it really is founded on an underlying principle, which is unique.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest distinction you see with the interpretation of the Constitution is that personal responsibility piece of it, right? A lot of people feel that, the Constitution awards us, like you said, it gives us these rights. We're entitled to these certain things. And then there's the other side of it that says, no, there's a personal responsibility aspect to it. Your rights should be, they're inherent. However, you're responsible for, your actions and moving forward and all of that. So I think that's a great distinction there regarding the Constitution. And I think that's kind of where you see a great division in this country is the personal responsibility piece, and some people grasp that concept and some don't.
Oh no, it's become a big problem, and in fact, that one of the biggest things that I think is causing so much division in the country today is really rooted in this idea of what is government for. And if you see government's primary responsibility as to serve certain limited functions and to be a safeguard against your natural rights, well, then you're going to see government as playing a limited role. If you see the government as essentially responsible for everything from your healthcare to your education to your food to, whatever else, well, now you don't have limited government. You have a government that is, powerful enough to intrude and invade upon every aspect of your life. And the end result is you don't. That is such a departure from what America was founded to be and what it's supposed to be, that if they ever fully realize it, right? If the people that are trying to push toward this ever fully realize it, America will cease to exist as the concept that made it so powerful in the first place. It'll essentially just be another tired, bureaucratic, heavy nation state that doesn't even have, what you might consider some of the, the history or other components that would make for a stable society. And so it's really important that as Americans, we stay committed to that vision of what America is. Otherwise, I don't see us lasting.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I didn't want to, Mike and I don't touch much on politics. I wanted to a little bit, just given my, my passion for it, and I said my education behind it. But I did want to touch on it a little bit, just given your position and given, my interest in it as well. But
yeah,
kind of moving forward is, one of the things I hear you talk a lot about is, the role of the man, right? In society, in the household, as a leader, as a provider, as a protector. But one of the things I came across today, or not even today, I saw it weeks ago, was when you said that a man must be capable of violence. A good man needs to be capable of violence. I've always kind of embraced that mentality of, being capable of violence, but also being, that being a controlled thing, right? Not making sure that, your family, your wife, your daughter, the people that you're assigned to protect don't necessarily ever need to see that side of you. But I really liked the way you interpreted that and kind of went forward with that in the role of just, you're there to provide. You have a responsibility to provide and protect. And I couldn't agree more. So when I saw that, it definitely resonated.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to me how within popular culture there's been this push toward the idea of violence as a concept as being almost universally negative, which is of course absurd, right? If somebody's hurting you, if a bad guy is hurting you, you want a good guy to show up and stop them, and chances are they're gonna need a little bit more than discourse in order to make that happen. And so I think the safer society has become, the less people have kind of like to discuss or truly contemplate what it takes to actually keep a society safe. And when you have a healthy supply of good men capable of violence, but who only use it in service to something that's true, that's noble, in service to those who can't defend themselves, then you have a healthy society where people are actually allowed to thrive. If you have a society like this idea that if only men were more docile and feminine, we'd all be safer. Like, first of all, no, that's not accurate. And it's not accurate for a variety of reasons. One is because you're never going to convince all men to be that. And chances are the ones that will, if that becomes the predominant view within a culture, the ones that will not accept that are probably the ones that recognize that if they're the only ones capable of using violence, well, then they're going to use it to their own ends as opposed to something more nobler. The other reason it doesn't work is because I hate this idea that women are somehow not violent. No, women just they execute violence in different ways. So again, it's important to have a strong element of culture that is masculine, is capable of violence. The way I word it sometimes is that there's a part of me that has only ever been seen in Iraq, right?
Sure.
Under very unique circumstances within combat. And the reason why it's only been seen by the guys that I was on a team with and some other guys that are either in a jail or not here anymore is because that side of me is for my family. It is for my friends. It is for my country. It's never toward them. And that requires a degree of not only physical discipline, it also requires a degree of intellectual or mental discipline as well, which is why a good man capable of violence is also someone that has the emotional and intellectual maturity to know when it is to be used and when it is to be put away.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just saw that, and it's almost like the Jordan Peterson concept. He says something very similar, and it's kind of just that warrior mentality that it's controlled. It's in a cage until you need to use it. But I wanted to bring it up because it seems as though the role that role of a man is just they're purposely trying to diminish it with terms like toxic masculinity and you're almost shamed if you're an old-fashioned man who believes in certain things and certain masculine traits. And so I wanted to touch upon that, and because it just seems like it's diminishing, right?
Well, it's a really pernicious way they're coming after it too. Like
Yes.
imagine like if a foreign entity, like a foreign enemy came in and said, oh yeah, masculinity is bad. We'd all be like, screw you, dude. Right? Like, well, of course you're telling us masculinity is bad because you probably want to dominate and control us. And the thing standing in your way is masculine men. So that isn't going to happen, right? It would be obvious. One of the ways that they've really attacked masculinity in this country is through women, is through and I'm not talking about like early feminism, which was focused more on ideas of equality before the law and voting
Right.
rights. Like, I think we all get that. I'm talking about these more modern adaptations of it, which are rooted in ideologies that has nothing really to do with protecting femininity. It has a lot more to do with both redefining it and then treating men like we're the enemy. And the reason why that is so dangerous is because if you look at a significant reason why men develop the ability to provide, to protect, and to use it wisely and for noble purposes, it's in service to women, right? That's why that's one of the greatest motivators behind being a good man is we have a woman that we want to protect and provide for. And that starts off on your earliest stages of development with how your mother is raises you or helps to raise you. And then when you find that woman that you're in love with and that you want to marry, and then you start having kids, that's what calls out that maturity within men to be able to develop these capabilities in service, not just to our own ends, but for our wife, for our children. And so for masculinity to be attacked by women in such a way, it is far more dangerous because men naturally, we want to be men, but we also want to attract a woman, right? Like that's very important to us. And if femininity is no longer rewarding masculinity, it's actually this really perverse incentive to get men to change and to do something else. Here's the crazy part. Women aren't happy with it, right?
Yeah.
Women are not happy with weak men. I mean, you have a lot of women that really push this movement about toxic masculinity and men are the problem. And then they look around and they're like, I can't understand why I can't find a good traditional man. Like, are you serious right now? Yeah, because you get less of what you punish. That's why.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that men have to realize at this point, and this is where, I think strong fathers and strong mothers really come into play, is that we need to be raising young men to appreciate the fact that regardless of what pop culture might be telling you right now, they're going to wake up to the fact pretty damn quick that they don't like what they've created. And part of being a man is choosing to do the right thing, is developing the appropriate capabilities, developing the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, professional capabilities, regardless of whether or not current trends in society are rewarding it to the degree that you think necessary. Right. It's choosing to do that. And unfortunately right now, it's almost become a kind of countercultural revolt for men to be like, screw that. I'm going to develop myself because I know what the right thing to do is. And the dangerous part right now, and I would argue this is even more dangerous for women, is there's two competing theories now. There's actually three. One theory on what should men be is to just embrace this new in touch with your feminine side, abandon all the. again, nobody likes that dude. Like the guy that does that, guys don't like him, women don't like him, feminists don't like him, right? Because he's weak and ineffectual. He's weak and incompetent. Nobody likes weakness or incompetence. So there's that dude, right? And that guy's pretty much discarded. Nobody cares. Then you have one sector of the male population, which is essentially saying, screw this. I'm going to develop my capabilities. I'm going to develop my prowess as a man. And then I'm going to make you pay for ever telling me that I shouldn't have. And I'm going to do what's best for me. And it's almost kind of like this dual lane quest for both power and pleasure, right? So I'm going to develop the power so I can maximize my pleasure, my wants, my desires, and screw the rest of you. That's a pretty dangerous version of masculinity, right? That's all the worst manifestations of masculine traits. The other side is the side where it's guys like us saying, no, I'm going to reject this idea that I need to be weak. I'm going to embrace all of those traditional masculine traits, but I want them to be manifested in ways that are positive, not just for myself, but for my family, for my wife, my kids, my country, my community, right? And I'm going to insist upon that, and I'm going to fight for that. And even if it's not fully appreciated in the ways that it probably should be, I'm still going to fight for it because it's the only way to get society back to the area where we properly appreciate it for what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I just thought of this study that I saw maybe, I don't know, it's probably like a month or two ago. And it was something like, actually, I think my girlfriend showed it to me. She sent it to me on Instagram. It was even liberal women would prefer a more conservative man because they're actually a man.
Yes.
Right? Because even though our politics are far off from maybe what they believe or agree with, they're still more attracted to what we present and what we are able to provide as men. So I thought that was funny.
Well, not only that, but here's what I've noticed. The stronger the woman, the stronger the man they require, right? And I don't mean require as in, I mean, they want it. That's their desirable trait. Have you ever seen a truly strong woman with a weak guy? That is a marriage that ain't going to last, man. That's a relationship that's not going to last. And so if you were to meet my wife, here's what you would find. You would find an incredibly strong, incredibly opinionated woman who knows what she believes and will fight with it and will, argue with me about stuff and the whole deal. What you'll also find is a woman that embraces genuine femininity, which is to say that she embraces her role to, build a home and build a family and to nurture and to be industrious and to be, intellectually formidable and all of those things, because she doesn't see her role as competing with me. She sees her role as complementing me, and I see my role as complementing her. And the end result is that our marriage is something that is so much better than the sum of the individual parts of it. But you see some of these situations where, again, if you want to sit there and if a woman wants to sit there and pretend she can do anything a man can do, okay. And if a man wants to sit there and pretend he can do anything a woman can do, okay, we'll see how that works out for you. Actually, check that. We're seeing how it works out for people, and nobody's happy. Nobody's happy. So maybe it's not crazy to look at this and say, look, there are aspects within what we would call tradition that at times probably overemphasize some things and underemphasized other things. But the general principle that men and women have certain roles and that those roles are complementary and that those roles are equally important, but they're different is not a bizarre conclusion to come to. Now, will there always be exceptions to rules? Sure. Like I'll tell you right now, if something breaks in my house, you probably want Tina trying to fix it rather than me. She's just more mechanical. She grew up that way. She's good at it. She appreciates it. And so in our marriage, that's an adjustment that people from the outside looking in and be like, well, that's different from the norm. Yes, but it works for us and it's okay. But by the same token, there's no doubt who is primarily responsible for protecting and providing in my home. And so I think a lot of this is about understanding that there's certain principles at play. And when you embrace those principles, you're no longer threatened by some of the exceptions to the rules. But when you try to throw out the principles altogether, lo and behold, nobody's happy with the conclusion.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's funny because it's similar in my situation with my girlfriend too. I wouldn't say she's more mechanically inclined or anything like that, but she's very mechanically inclined. Like she would rather just try to do things and go off on her own and try to fix this or fix that or whatever, without my help. And I've never been around that before, so it's new to me. But I'm like, hey, if you want to try it, if you want to do it, then great. Yeah, but it's just some women are just like you said that they're more willing to accept those traditional roles, but also like you said, if you're both together willing to accept those exceptions to those rules, then that works as well. So totally agree with you on that. But just going back to I saw you on the Present Fathers podcast with my buddy George Hayworth, and you're talking about you know how legacy starts with you, right? And again, when I started the podcast, I wanted to kind of get my story out there, talk a little bit about my past, and kind of turn it into a podcast for the means of like just kind of sharing and creating a dialogue. And I grew up in and out of foster care. My mother passed away from AIDS when I was 11, so I've never met my biological father. Eventually got adopted by my aunt, my mother's sister. And I just struggled kind of, like I said, my whole life with just identity, right? And legacy, and kind of just felt like, who am I type of a scenario, and never really kind of felt like I fit in that regard. So just, yeah, and like I was saying earlier, I just changed my name for the third time in my life. So I've kind of just always struggled, right? Like, how am I supposed to create a legacy if I don't really have much to go off of, right? But I was going through the content today and saw that video, and it definitely hit pretty hard, because when you kind of say that, legacy starts with you, and then if you look back at, what's going on in your family for the last 1,000 years or so, what the hell, like what happened, right? But you still can have the opportunity or create an opportunity to see or shape, kind of what the next 1,000 years look like. So if you just want to touch upon that message, I mean, that definitely hit home for me. I liked it a lot. And it definitely resonates, especially just given my situation in my past.
Sure. No, yeah, I was talking to somebody, I can't remember what it was about, but I had talked a lot about like legacy, and part of a man's, job and responsibility is you're protecting that legacy. And I had people going, okay, that's great, but I don't have one. I don't know who my father was. I don't know who my grandfather was. Like, I don't have that. And it's an interesting point, because, my parents got divorced when I was little, remarried, divorced, like all that stuff. But my dad was always there. I was close with my grandparents. I had men in my life that I looked up to include, my father, my grandparents. And I was thinking about that, and it doesn't mean, if you don't have that, it is nice to be able to protect a legacy and to build on one and to move it forward. But if you don't have it, what it means is you're it. It starts with you. And there's something truly admirable and incredible about a man that didn't have a good example provided to them, didn't have the things that they were supposed to have, who then makes the decision that they're going to break that cycle for the rest of their line, for who comes after them. And if you think about that as something of a very unique opportunity, that one day your great grandchildren, as they're going back and they're listening to the stories from their father and their grandfather, and the fact that all of that was possible because you decided to stop the path of the destruction that your family line had been on and move it into a different direction. That is a legacy worth fighting for and worth building. And so I'm not going to pretend that that's easy, and I'm not going to pretend that I can fully appreciate what it's like to have to start, to be the one that starts it. But I do think it is incredible when a man chooses to do that. And you just think about the generations that benefit as a result of that. That's incredible.
Yeah. I definitely think, that just me personally, my situation, I think that's just kind of the best way to look at it and think about it kind of just moving forward is like it's a great, opportunity as opposed to like, ah, shit, like this just kind of is what it is, and gonna transfer those values down and keep going, right?
Well, when you hear the term, and I mean, look, we were all military, right? And you were infantry, and so when you ever hear the term "be a man," we all kind of intuitively know what that means. We may have different ideas about, what it's like to, like, the pinnacle of what it means to be a man. But when you hear the words "be a man," you know exactly what it means. It means whatever the current situation that you're going through, suck it up and fulfill your responsibilities and keep your word. Right? It means to look past the discomfort, the fear, whatever it is within that situation, and do your job and keep your word. And in order to do that effectively, it does take developing yourself spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, physically, professionally. But I think there's something just in that common legacy that all men kind of understand whenever we hear that term, to be a man, that's what it means. And for some people, that's having to overcome a whole hell of a lot more discomfort, a whole hell of a lot more fear than somebody else. And having to go through those circumstances where you didn't have a father to show you how to do that, or you didn't have a grandfather to help, or whatever else, and choosing to do it anyways because you're a man and that's what you're going to do. You become the man that future generations in your line, in your family, look up to. You're the example. In a way that you couldn't have fully been, at least not in the same respect, if you hadn't had to overcome that difficulty or that challenge. And so that's why I say it shouldn't happen, right? No man should have to overcome that. You should have the benefit of a father. You should have the benefit of other men that came before you in order to help you know how to do that and navigate that. But if you don't and you choose to do it anyways, you seek out the proper mentorship. You overcome that. You overcome the fear. You overcome the discomfort. You overcome the deprivation. That's again, that's the sort of man that other men look up to.
Yeah. So I know this is probably not a very easy answer, but I'm kind of curious what you talked about in the beginning, how we've gone way off path of what our forefathers started. Just to, and maybe, I don't know if there's a quick answer to this, but like, what do you, from your vantage point, what is the way forward? Is it fixable, or are we way off course?
I think it's fixable, but I don't. I think it's fixable. I think a lot of people want there to be a fix that is either easy or saves us from pain. That I don't think is possible anymore. Agreed. Several decades ago, we could have, maybe fixed some of this with minimal pain. We're going to feel some pain now. And I mean, honestly, we not only need to, we kind of deserve to. And what I mean by that is that there's a cycle throughout history, and obviously kind of the simplest version of it is when you see the ones where it's like, strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. I think there's going to be some element of bad times that we're going to have to go through, and maybe in some respects are already in. And the reason why we're going to have to go through that is because of the weakness that has existed up to this point. It's because of many bad decisions, some of them political, some of them social, some of them intellectual. And the reason why we're going to experience the pain at this point is because that's the consequence. And you got to have the pain, because the pain is what motivates you to fix it. And the pain is what also hopefully helps you remember what not to do again in the future. But that pain has to be properly associated to the origins, like what actually caused the pain, because there's going to be a lot of people fighting over what caused it. There's going to be a lot of different narratives on what the source of the pain was. And our job at this point is going to be to say, hey, look, for me, my opinion is this. I mean, my faith is a building block of everything else. It's my Christian faith is the source of my, it's the lens through which I view the world, through which I view truth, for which I view objective morality, objective reality, all of those things.
Love it.
And then, it's an obligation to also raise your kids to have a firm foundation in their own identity, what they believe, why they believe it. They can't just believe it because mom and dad told them to. They have to believe it because they believe it's true. And so I do think it's going to be fixed. I don't think it's going to be fixed by an election cycle, right? Our problems are so much bigger than just political. A lot of the political problems that we see are downstream from cultural problems that have been festering over decades now. And a big part of that, and this is something that we should look at both with a sense of obligation, but I think also with a sense of privilege, and I mean that in the proper term, not in the pejorative way that it's often thrown around now, is it's men stepping up and fulfilling their proper roles to be leaders within their families, leaders within their communities, and leaders within their country. And that's not to the detriment of women, and it's not to the detriment to say that women don't also have roles in which they need to lead. I think that's absolutely true. But the good news is I think it's fully within our capability. I think arguably you could say we're one generation away from doing it, but it means that we're going to have to raise a generation of men that believe in the right things, raise a generation of women that believe the correct things. And again, if you have a country which is founded on the idea of individual liberty, personal responsibility, property rights, there's almost this, what happened in the United States that I think was really interesting was you have this combination of rugged individualism combined with a strong sense of family and community. And you can build a very powerful country off of that. We've proven that. But right now our entire country is going through an identity crisis, both at the national level, but also at the individual level. When you've got kids that don't fully understand not only who they are, but what they are, and they're being told that reality doesn't matter. It's all about whatever they feel the most comfortable with, as if reality is going to accommodate that, right? You can ignore reality. You can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And so we need to get back to this idea of, are we on a national level? Are we perfect as a nation? No. Is our history perfect? Absolutely not. Has it on the whole been an overall force for good, both philosophically and practically for the rest of the world? Oh, I don't know. Everybody's still trying to get in here for some reason. People still want to come here. I don't see anybody in America going down to Miami, making a makeshift boat and trying to get to Cuba, right?
Thanks.
So we got some things right. And the whole idea of our Constitution saying a more perfect union is that each generation has to see it as an obligation to build upon certain foundational principles and then to live them out better than the last generation did. And that doesn't mean looking at previous generations and like, oh, you guys were, stupid, idiot, bigots, whatever. It's like, no, each generation had various things to contend with and challenges to overcome. And we should respect that we are standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us. And what that does is maybe give us a little bit better view on how to avoid the obstacles that they ran into. But to not look at them with this sense of arrogance that, oh, you morons, I can't believe you. Well, no, it's different generations have to have different things they got to combat. And so when we can recognize that on the national level, that's something that gives us something to shoot for as a nation. But the only way we're going to get to that is if we first build that on an individual level as recognizing who you are. Like for me, this is easy. I'm created in the image of God, right? That's what I believe about people. I believe you have inherent worth as a result of that. And then that comes with certain privileges just by virtue of being a human being, but it also comes with certain responsibilities. And one of the things that I think has been proven over and over again is that absolving human beings of all of their responsibilities, whether to themselves or providing for themselves, taking care of themselves or taking care of others, absolving of those responsibilities and outsourcing it to the government or outsourcing it to a political party or organization or politician, that doesn't bring wealth, prosperity, and security. You take somebody and you give them everything that they need to survive: food, shelter, clothing. Do they end up happy as a result? No, they end up miserable because there's something to be had in the struggle of providing for yourself. And then to be able to use the skills and the resources that you've gained to be able to help others to do the same. And that's what we need to get back to, is understanding our own identities, understanding our own roles and purposes with it, both to ourselves and to our families and to society at large. and then building upon that in order to, once again, to be able to come together and say, look, we're always going to have differences of opinions on certain things. But one of the things that's special about the United States is we know who we are. We know what we're trying to accomplish on some level. To the extent that we agree, we will work together. And to the extent that we don't, we will leave each other alone rather than try to use political force to get everybody to do what we want. And I think if we can get back to those basic core fundamentals, then we can remember once again what it is to, again, not be perfect, but to have an idea of the ideal and to strive for it.
Absolutely love that, because probably the best answer I've heard in a long time, because I feel like a lot of people are waiting for somebody from the top down to save us. And I've always believed in, you put it really well, it starts at the bottom level. It's from the bottom up. It should be the family, communities, and individual, family, community, and up. So awesome answer, man. Love that.
Yeah, and one of the things you said there in response to Mike's question, which I liked, is that, the issues that we have, they're fixable. However, we need to raise a generation of people that, have the right values and characteristics and things of that nature to make the proper changes, right? So kind of my response to that is a question, because it's something that I've wrestled with, right? Because a lot of people say it now, and I want to know your response to this is what do you say to when people are like, Jesus, it's kind of a scary thought to kind of bring kids into this world today, because of, like you said, just generations, years and years now, decades really, of just this country just being on a decline. And now we are in this point where we're going to have to rebound. We're going to have to bounce back and feel some pain from that. So, I mean, I know I say it to myself. I ultimately do want children, right?
Yeah.
But it is a scary thought because, God's being taken out of schools. The flag's being taken out of schools. Pride for your country is being taken out of schools. But what's not being taken out of schools, but what's being placed there instead is, drag queens reading to your children. So there's all of these things that I think is just so backwards, and I just don't know the direction we're headed. And it is a scary thought, in my opinion.
So don't put your kids in the schools.
Yeah.
Right. Part of what this comes, I mean, look, let's also look at this in some degree of perspective. For the vast majority of human history, if your wife was pregnant, there was pretty good chance that child was going to die before the age of 2. Right. And that's why you were going to have 8 kids, right? Because you also needed them to help with the farm and everything else. So It is as frustrating as things are right now and as concerning as things get from time to time right now. I still think on the whole, we really don't have a great argument. Our great grandfathers would be like, what the hell are you worried about exactly? Like, your kid's not going to starve by the time that they're 12, right? You're not worried about famine. You're not worried about some, plague coming in and wiping them out. You're not worried about, them dying from something that we can solve today with a penicillin, right? Like, come on, man, right? Like, so part of it is we have there's a lot of things right now that are certainly difficult and problematic with the world. But here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you want your side to win, you better be the side having kids.
That's right? It's a good point. And then it's the question of how are you going to raise them? Like, we had our kids in public school for like a couple years, and then we chose to take them out because we didn't like what was going on. There's another thing that we got to get past, and this is the idea that society gets to tell us what's normal. Okay, great. If society is making good society, right? If popular culture is elevating things that we think are good and noble and true, well then absolutely. That is a society can play a positive role in pushing people toward good decisions. But if popular culture is having drag queen story hour, I don't give a damn what popular culture tells me is appropriate with respect to the raising of my children, right? There should be certain indicators that it's like, okay, as soon as you do this, I stop listening to you, right? Or I sure as hell stop taking advice from you. And now I separate my children from that environment and I find alternatives. And the good news is we still live in a relatively free country where you can do that. And here's the deal. I didn't just remove my kids from public school because I had a problem with respect to what the schools were doing. And by the way, there was a lot of great teachers at that school. They just weren't the ones controlling the school, right? Bureaucrats were, politicians were. So I pulled them out. But I didn't just pull them out because I had a problem with the school. I pulled them out because here's the other thing I realized. Government schools are based off of a mass production model of education. Now, if that's all you can get,
that might be better than nothing. Maybe it could be worse depending on what your kids are being taught or exposed to. But I wanted my kids to have an individualized approach to education. I didn't want them to think of education as a government building that they went to. I wanted them to think of education as a nonstop process of learning and developing capabilities and becoming intellectually formidable and all of those things. And the thing was, I didn't have to be rich to do that. I had to make enough to where my wife didn't have to work outside the home. Now, here's what that meant. That means our house isn't that awesome, right? It means that we don't drive fancy cars. It means we don't have fancy jewelry. You know what I do have? I have 3 kids, 21, 18, and 16. My oldest just got married to a great guy. They bought their first house. Mom and dad didn't pay for it. She worked her butt off. He worked. They saved up money. They bought a house, right? I've got a great relationship with my kids. My kids are very confident in who they are, their identity, their belief system. They feel capable of defending it intellectually. They feel committed to their that they have purpose and meaning in this life. So you can't point me in the direction of a cooler house, a better car, more expensive jewelry that would have been worth any of that. Now, I recognize some people find themselves in a situation where they cannot survive without double income. I get it. I'm not looking down. I'm not saying any of that. I am saying that one of my goals when my wife and I got married at 19 and 20, and I was a private in the Army, man. It's like, you know the deal, dude. I know the deal. We weren't rolling in it, right? She had to work outside of the home when we first got married. We had talked when we were dating, and we talked about our expectations. I said, look, my goal financially is not to be, the richest guy on the planet. I wouldn't mind, right? But like my goal is to earn enough to where when we start having kids, you don't have to work outside of the home if you don't want to. And she said, good, that's my goal. I want to contribute. I want to contribute financially, but when we get to a point where we have kids, I want my primary focus to be raising them, educating them, and building a home. And so that's what I work toward. And again, when I was a staff sergeant in the Army, in SF, I was making enough to where we could do that. And so that's what I would say. Another thing, a goal for men, if you're concerned about raising kids in this environment, first and foremost, don't be making kids with somebody that you don't want to build a life with. I always tell guys this, I tell young men this, if you're not ready to be a daddy, don't be doing daddy things, right? Yeah. When you do find that woman that you want to get married to, values are the most important thing up front. Get married for values. And then all the other stuff, follows along from that. And then, have kids and then focus on, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I can raise my kids in an environment where I can protect them from the things that truly hurt them. And that doesn't mean you protect your kids from everything, right? The way I tried to explain it to somebody is I protect my kids from scars, not bruises. And all I mean by that is the things that are really going to hurt them, I protect them from, and I say no, and I put rules on them, and I explain why I have those rules. But that doesn't mean I don't let my kids go out there and try and strive and fall down and get, get the scrapes on the knees, right? And then get up, suck it up, and keep trying, because that's life, man. It's not always fair, and there's going to be setbacks, and so much of your life is going to be determined by how you deal with the setbacks. But that's what you do. If you're concerned about raising kids in that environment, find the sort of women that you truly want to build a family with. We have a lot of guys that are really good at finding a woman they want to have sex with, which is pretty easy, right? Guys need to focus more on who do I want to build a family with, and then get to the other stuff. Because I will tell you right now, as much as I'm concerned about what's going on in the world, I never had any concerns about raising children with my wife. None. Fully confident that we would be able to do that, and we will be able to do that effectively because of our values and our commitments to each other and our commitments to our children. And that's what you want, man. When you've got a woman that you can build a family with like that, there can be a lot of things going on in the world, and you still feel really, really secure in your family and your home as a result. Yeah, no, that's great. And I have said that out loud and had that discussion where if I had kids, it wouldn't be a public school. There's no chance. I've always said that for a lot of those same reasons. I just think, with everything going on there, I think the best thing to do, if you can, like you said, if you can do it financially, is to go that private route or homeschool route or whatever. But Well, a lot of it is just being involved, right? It's you to the extent possible, you always want to avoid putting your children in a situation with authority figures that are contradicting what you're raising your children to believe and be.
Yeah.
And that can happen in private school as well, right? So it's about making sure that you're aware of the influences you're voluntarily exposing your children to.
Right.
So I really have one more question because you brought up your faith, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up.
Yeah,
But
please.
I was recently saved. I became a man of faith a couple months ago. So I don't know if it's because once my eyes are open, I kind of see things everywhere, or if these things really happening around me. What I mean by that, I feel like there's almost a revival of sorts. Like things have gotten so bad that people are like, "What's going on?" And they're going to Christ. I just didn't know, is this something that I'm seeing, or how do you see it from your foxhole?
No, I think it's happening more and more. And look, sometimes and some people try to they dismiss that as, well, yeah, something was bad. And so you're looking for, Sky Santa to make sense of things. I was raised Christian, but I was raised in what I would call a very kind of like emotional, version of Christianity. And I never walked away from my faith, but let's just say when I first went into the military, it wasn't significant in my life. It was almost a cultural thing. Yeah, I'm a Christian. I was raised that way. And it was three guys actually. It was my neighbor, Anthony Brown, an SF captain, Ryan Nienaber, and another guy whose name I don't remember, in the 18 Fox course when I got back from my first tour in Iraq. And here's what was interesting. All three of these men challenged me in my faith, but I respected them as men first. Right? I respected them as men. I respected them as warriors. And they caused me to really dig into the intellectual side of my faith, because it's very important to me. I don't want to believe something because it makes me feel better. I want to believe something because it's true. And so I started to really just run my faith through the ringer, like the intellectual ringer. Does this make sense? Is this something that I should put my faith in? Because if I'm going to raise my children to believe it, well, then it better be true. It better be true. Otherwise, I'm just giving them another fairy tale to make them feel better about a dangerous world, and I don't want to do that. And what I found through that rigorous intellectual pursuit is that I found it to be true. And I also found it to provide what I thought was the absolute best explanation of what I see going on in the world. And so, and the reason why I think more people are starting to come to that conclusion is not because, again, it's convenient Sky Daddy, right? I think they're coming to that conclusion in part because some people within the faith have been very, very good representatives of Christ. And there's a verse in Philippians where it talks about the peace which surpasses all understanding. And the reason why I think I feel like that is the verse of this time, of this era, is because it doesn't say the peace that everyone understands. It doesn't say the peace that's obvious. It says the peace which surpasses all understanding. What needs to be going on in the world for you to have a peace that everybody else looks at and goes, I don't understand that? Why is that there? Why do you have that? And for me, it's pretty simple. I believe that Scripture explains the human condition. The other thing I love about the Bible is that it is one of the only religious texts in the world that opens itself up to very obvious scrutiny, because it's not just a book of like wise sayings or whatnot. It's a book of history. You want to prove the Bible wrong? Great. Go in there and prove that all the places they're talking about and things like that never existed, didn't exist. Archaeologists have been trying to do that for centuries, and the Bible still stands. So it allowed itself to open up for scrutiny. And here's what I found is that in that faith that I have, which I think is also rooted on intellectually rigorous research, I have my sense of identity. I have my sense of meaning. I have my sense of purpose. Right now, life is going pretty well. My daughter just got married to a wonderful guy. I love my wife. My son is actually going to go off to the Army this year. I love my son, love my youngest daughter, who knows she can probably get away with the most of all the kids, but right. Adore my wife, love my friends, love the work that I'm doing. You could take it all away tomorrow and I would be distraught. I would be heartbroken. but I would not for one second question my identity, my meaning, or my purpose. Right? That's the peace which surpasses all understanding. And you can build something truly incredible off of that foundation. Because one of the biggest things that you recognize is that ultimately it's not all about you. And thank God. And thank God it isn't. Thank God that there is an objective truth and morality and love and justice that you can point to. So, yeah, that's. I think more people are starting to see the fruit of that, and they're starting to ask some important questions on like, why does that peace exist when it shouldn't? And that's what opens up to be able to explain exactly why it exists.
It's awesome. Great answer, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike and I both actually just recently started getting back into it. And, like yourself, I kind of grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years, and it was all a formality. It was all, like you said, a cultural thing. And yeah, I'm Catholic. And for me, it was going overseas and being overseas and feeling like, here we are, we're getting shot at because these guys think that, they're gods, they hate us because of their religion and all this stuff. So I had all this confusion about it, right? And so I just got away from it. I turned my back on it. It was like, I don't think this is for me. If you're religious, great. I never, talked down to anybody about it or talked down about religion or anything, but it wasn't for me for a long time. And just this last fall, I was just sitting there like, what, I'm gonna give it another shot, kind of a thing. And there really wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason behind it. It wasn't like I was going through a tough time or whatever, but I was just more curious than anything because my girlfriend, her father is very religious, goes to church all the time. And so I said, hey, I think I'm going to give the Bible a shot. I haven't read it since middle school. And, where do I start? And he said, start with the New Testament, right? So I start reading. I've gotten almost all the way through it. And it's so, it's surprising. It's shocking when you start to really read it and absorb it, how relevant, those stories are to just the human condition and how we conduct ourselves. And, but yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. And I've kind of like Mike, just found, that piece of it again. And it's very refreshing. It feels great.
Sorry, man, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love, the New Testament, the Gospels. I love the book of Romans. I think the Romans, I think you read the book of Romans and it makes a lot of sense of the world that we're living in today. I also love reading through, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, talking about, David and Solomon another book too that I always tell people was really influential to me, was Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Because C.S. Lewis, who's, kind of better known for like the Chronicles of Narnia and stuff like that. C.S. Lewis was adamantly atheist.
Okay.
He referred to himself as the, what was the quote he used? It was something like the most, something that can do the most difficult convert in all of England. But he became a Christian, and he wrote the book Mere Christianity as something of an explanation of what turned this very, very intelligent, very intellectually minded, kind of vociferous atheist on some level, not obnoxious, but very confident in his atheism. What turned him into being one of the most dedicated Christians of the 20th century and one of the most influential Christians when it came to explaining the Christian faith. But yeah, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis is an excellent book.
Mike just made a note of it, so we're probably going to read it now.
Make sure to check it out.
Yeah.
So with me, I grew up in a Christian household. My parents, my mother did a good job exposing me to Christianity. I just never believed fully because of all these things that all these people say. But recently I had an experience with God, which I'm not going to get into here, but there's no denying once you have an experience like this, that it's for real, and you can't turn your back on that and deny it after that.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I didn't decide to be, I don't like saying religious. I like to say I have a relationship with God, or trying to, because of what happened. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the core tenets of Christianity too, that it's not just a process of systematically following religious doctrine or theology. It really is about seeking a relationship with a God that wants to have a relationship. And that's a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah.
It's also powerful because as one person put it, he goes, you might be able to make an intellectually rigorous argument for why my wife doesn't exist. In fact, you might be able to make an argument so good that I don't know how to counter your intellectual argument. But you're not going to convince me my wife doesn't exist because I have a relationship with her.
Love that.
And it's supposed to be the same thing with God.
Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, no, so that was good. That's good. One of the things that I was asked actually to bring up to you is that there's a girl who came across our podcast on Instagram. She started following us. I posted that we'd be interviewing you, and she's like, ask Nick how he feels about pineapple on pizza, and he'll know who it is.
That's not fair because that could actually be a couple of people.
There's two of them. There's two.
Yeah. There's a couple people that could be. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this has become kind of a running joke now. In Virginia with my thoughts on pineapple on pizza, and it really comes down to this. I'm a very big believer that provided that you're not infringing on the rights of other people, you should have the right to do things, even things that I don't agree with, in the hopes that eventually truth and the consequences of actions will bring people about to the correct decisions. Except for pineapple on pizza. It's just it's a culinary crime. Right? Now, look, if you're starving to death and you got to have it, sure. But the fact that you would voluntarily put pineapple on pizza, like I don't know. I don't get it. My family disagrees with me. And I don't know. We're praying through it. It's
I agree with you. I've been to Italy twice, and I am Italian as well. And I've never in Italy, if you go there, as far as I know, they won't put it on pizza. Like
you know who the people are that put pineapple on pizza? They're the same ones that break the spaghetti before they put it in the pot to boil it, right? It's those people. Yeah, that's who they are. So I'm not taking culinary advice from people that put pineapple on pizza or break the spaghetti before they put it in the pot.
Exactly. So no, I thought that'd be good to lighten the mood a little bit. So she asked me to ask you that, and she's like, "He'll know who it is."
Oh gosh, that's not fair because there's a couple.
I'll tell you Andrea.
Oh,
Andrea,
intensive care bear. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she worked for you or worked with you in some capacity as a junior Republican.
Oh,
something.
Okay. I think that's a different Andrea. Yeah. Cause you see, that's the thing. I know a couple Andreas that would give me crap about pineapple on pizza, but, yeah. Okay. All righty. I'll get her back.
That's funny. So just in doing a little research, and I didn't know this actually until I think last night when I was looking it up. You ran for Senate in 2018.
Yes.
Are we going to be doing that again?
No, I don't think. No? Look, here's the deal. Here's what I'll tell people. I didn't have any lifelong dream to one day serve in politics. Right. There was two things I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to pitch for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I wanted to join the military. Right. It turns out I didn't have enough talent to make the starting lineup for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but the infantry was accepting. So look, I loved serving in the military. I loved being a Green Beret. I loved the culture of SF. I loved being infantry too. I didn't like painting rocks and area beautification at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, but I loved being SF. Yeah. I still have things in SF that I feel like I have unfinished business. I feel like there's things I still wish I would have been able to do. Sure. But I don't regret the decisions I made. And when I got out, I knew I'd get involved in politics in some way, but I thought I'd be on the policy side. And then a buddy asked me, I had a couple people come to me, and one guy in particular who's actually my co-host on the podcast now asked me to run for office, and so I did. And then some other opportunities came to run for Senate, run for Congress, and I did. The Senate race was kind of I knew that one was that was a hill I was going to die on. I didn't think I was going to win the general. I actually ran because I was trying to help protect a couple of congressional seats. And then when I ran for Congress, that was a brutal race, man. That was during COVID. We were ahead on election night. We were ahead the next day. Thumb Drive shows up with 15,000 votes from the bluest county and early votes, and we ended up losing by less than 2 points. And it was crazy because in that moment, I remember thinking like, God, why did we do this? Like, why? I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to run for Congress. I had some people come together and say, Nick, we really think you're the guy that can win this time around. And we did. We raised a lot of money. We fought hard. It was during COVID. So instead of being able to go out to talk to people, we had to, like, we started a podcast. We started all this other stuff. And then we won, right? We won on election night. We won the next morning when votes were still coming in, and then we lost. And it felt horrible. But I'll tell you this much though. About 2.5 years later, I was sitting around this table looking at the people I was working with, and I came and all of a sudden it hit me. If I hadn't run for Congress in 2020, Christian wouldn't be here working with us. Hamilton, who's my business partner and our producer, he wouldn't be here. Cody, who does our video editing, wouldn't be here. But the only way for this team to have been assembled and for me to be doing this, I had to run for Congress and I had to lose. Right? If I didn't run, I didn't meet the team. If I ran and I won, I wouldn't have time to do this. So I had to run and I had to lose. So I use that as an example that I trust God when he tells me to do stuff, even when it doesn't turn out the way I want, because he's got a better plan anyway.
Yes.
But so whenever somebody asks me, are you going to run for higher office again? Are you going to do this? I'm like, look, I don't say no, I would never do that, because I have also learned that the moment you say no, I'll never do that, circumstances, you might find yourself called to do something. But I will say this, it is not a part of my plan. Right now, I really like the cultural fight. I like my position in the Virginia House of Delegates. I do feel like a lot of the fights that we have right now are at the state level, and we got to be prepared to be able to fight at the state level. But I don't have like aspirations to be. I am definitely not the dude standing looking in the mirror going, Governor Freitas, President Freitas. Like, that is not me.
Yeah, I mean, even though we're up here in liberal Massachusetts, it would still make me feel better if you did run and win. So just remember that. No,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
We need more of that in Congress. More of you in Congress. But yeah, no, it's funny you say that though, because things just pan out, right? Things just happen how they happen, and there's, and it just is what it is, and things always happen the way they're supposed to, right? Like, because I remember, and Mike probably remembers this, when we got back from overseas, I had shoulder surgeries, I was getting healed up, and I kind of had this like opportunity where I was just going to go all in and be full time in the military, because we were deployed. Our commander and senior enlisted were actually SEALs. They were Navy SEAls, and they were commander of our provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan. And so after working with guys like that, I kind of had this itch to see what I was really made of.
Yeah.
And I had that discussion with my wife at the time, and the answer from her was pretty quick. Yeah, if you do that, we probably won't be married anymore.
Yeah.
Just with the long selection process and all of that. But I feel like everything just kind of shapes up the way it's supposed to, and I have no regrets now for not doing it. But yeah, it's just one of those things you look back and you're like, all right, well, maybe it was just for the best, and this is where I am now, and it's how it's supposed to be.
It's another thing that's kind of a freeing concept within Christianity is it's the idea that my job is to be obedient to the purpose or the path God lays out before me. He's responsible for victory. He's responsible for that stuff. My responsibility is to be obedient to that. And it's amazing how whenever I am, regardless of how it turns out, it's always better than I expected.
Yep.
And when I'm not, it's never as good as I thought it was going to be. Right. And so there is something to when you are confident that you are fulfilling the purpose that you've been given, it brings a lot of joy and satisfaction with it, regardless of your circumstances. And you can see people that are maybe more financially successful, but they're miserable. And you wonder, it's like, dude, are you fulfilling your purpose, or did you chase something else? And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, and I like how you put that, being obedient to God's plan, right? Because I pray every night, and I never once ever say, like, I never ask for anything. I just ask to be put on the right path, to be guided in the right direction, and give me the skills and the strength and the skill set necessary to just kind of fulfill that mission, whatever that looks like. That's what I ask for. And I think that's the best way. You just put it right there, and I agree completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure if you have anything else you wanted to discuss, but man, it's been great having you here. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
No problem. Like I
But
said, we if there isn't at least some technical difficulties in a podcast, are you really podcasting? Right? Like, so,
yeah, right.
So no. Thank you guys both for having me on. Thank you for what you're doing, and definitely thank you both for your service, not only militarily but also culturally.
Yeah, you as well, man. I appreciate you coming on. We're working so hard to try to get the right message out here. And when I was speaking to your people about having you on, I don't know if she went on our Facebook or our Instagram or whatever and checked everything out, but she kind of felt like, our values and everything aligned, and I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
All right.